Hi everyone, I'm Uncle Chatterbox Ivan. Today is Lecture 7 of the Creation vs. Evolution series on the topic of geological evidence for Noah's flood, catastrophism, and the fossil record. This episode explores the biblical foundation and geological evidence for Noah's flood as a real historical event, explaining how flood geology accounts for the major geological features of Earth's surface. The description has a link to my Patreon for in-depth discussion questions and materials for this lecture. Alright, let's get started. Number. In the previous Lecture 6, we analyzed the fundamental limitations of evolution's two core mechanisms, mutations and natural selection, proving they cannot achieve macroevolution. Mutations are primarily destructive, 60 to 70% harmful, 25 to 35% neutral, beneficial mutations less than 1%. The human genome is deteriorating, producing 50 to 100 new harmful mutations per generation. Mutations cannot generate new genetic information. Fruit fly experiments over thousands of generations produce no new kinds. Natural selection can only preserve existing information, not create new kinds. It's like a sieve that can only filter what already exists, not manufacture new things. Darwin's finch beak variations are reversible with in-kind variation, not evolution. Irreducible complexity, such as bacterial flagella, eyes, blood clotting systems, proves these systems cannot arise through gradual evolution. We also examined evolution's claimed transitional fossils. Archaeopteryx is a true bird, not a transitional form. The whale evolution series has incomplete fossils, scrambled chronology, and enormous anatomical gaps. The horse evolution series is artificially arranged, unsupported by stratigraphic order. Evidence for human evolution is sparse and controversial. Piltdown Man and Nebraska Man were both hoaxes. Australopithecus lucy was more likely an ape. Homo erectus and Neanderthals were true humans. The Bible clearly teaches organisms were created according to their kinds, a phrase appearing 10 times in Genesis chapter 1. But one question remains unresolved. If Earth is only thousands of years old, how are the kilometers-thick sedimentary rock layers, billions of fossils, massive canyons, and mountains formed? Evolutionists claim these require millions of years of slow processes. Young Earth creationism's answer, a global, catastrophic flood, Noah's flood, reshaped Earth's surface in approximately 1 year. This lecture explores Noah's flood's biblical foundation, geological evidence, and how the flood geology model effectively explains the geological phenomena we observe today. Genesis chapter 6:9's account of Noah's flood is not allegory or exaggeration, but a detailed record of a real historical event. Genesis 7 verses 19 to 20 states, "The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits, NIV. The text uses the strongest Hebrew expressions. Under the entire heavens, kol haaretz, means the entire earth. All, kol, means not some or many, but all. Covered means completely submerged, no exceptions. If the flood were merely local, these descriptions would be absurd exaggeration. But if it was a global flood, these are accurate historical records. Genesis 7 verses 21 to 23 states, "Every living thing that moved on land perished, birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark, NIV. Everyone died except the 8 people in the ark." If this were merely a local flood, why build such an enormous ark? Why not have Noah and the animals migrate out of the flood zone? These details only make sense in the context of a global flood. The flood lasted approximately 1 year and 10 days, not days or weeks of rain, but over a year of global catastrophe. Genesis 6 verses 5 to 7 states, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. NIV. God's purpose was to judge the wickedness of the entire earth, not just one region. A local flood could not accomplish this purpose. Genesis 7 verse 11 states, In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. NIV. All the springs of the great deep burst forth is interpreted by young earth creationist geologists as large-scale crustal fracturing triggering global volcanic eruptions and magma outpourings, massive groundwater surging from deep within the crust, rapid plate movement and continental breakup, formation of mid-ocean ridges and sinking of ocean basins. Creationist geophysicist Dr. John Baumgartner, a UCLA PhD in geophysics, developed the Advanced Terra Plate Simulation program and proposed the Catastrophic Plate Tectonics model. At the flood's onset, runaway subduction occurred in the mantle. Cold, dense oceanic plates rapidly sank into the mantle, triggering global plate reorganization and the breakup of the original supercontinent. The entire process completed within months, not hundreds of millions of years. This explains mid-ocean ridges, deep ocean trenches, volcanic chains, and other geological features. The floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. This was not ordinary rainfall but unprecedented deluge. Possible mechanisms include collapse of a pre-flood vapor canopy, massive water vapor condensation from volcanic eruptions, global superhurricanes and storm systems. Enormous quantities of volcanic ash, mud, and sediment rapidly accumulated, swiftly burying various organisms and vegetation. Fossil formation typically requires rapid burial to prevent organisms from decaying or being scavenged. Noah's flood provided ideal fossil formation conditions. Jesus and the apostles all treated Noah's flood as a real historical event. Matthew 24 verses 37 to 39 states, As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. NIV. Jesus compared Noah's flood to his second coming, clearly treating it as real history. 2 Peter 3 verses 3 to 6 states that scoffers deliberately forget that the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. NIV. Peter explicitly states that denying Noah's flood, deliberately forgetting, characterizes end-time scoffers. Creationist geologists divide Earth history into three main stages. First, the pre-flood period, from creation week to the flood start, a perfect primordial world with mild climate, lush vegetation, and limited geological activity. Second, the flood period, approximately 1 year of global catastrophe. Third, the post-flood period, current geological processes. Why so few pre-flood fossils? Pre-flood surface sediments were mostly eroded or rearranged by the flood, and pre-flood depths were relatively few. The flood year lasted approximately 1 year, divided into 3 phases. Phase 1, rising stage, first 40 to 150 days, springs of the deep burst open, submarine volcanic eruptions, torrential rain, water rapidly rising and submerging lowlands, marine organisms buried first forming Cambrian, Ordovician strata. Phase 2, peak stage, approximately 150 days, global surface completely covered by water, continuing plate movement and volcanic activity, rapid accumulation of massive sediment. Phase 3, receding stage, last 150 to 221 days, Genesis 8 verses 1 to 3 states, God sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. The water receded steadily from the earth. NIV. Mountains uplifted, ocean basins sank, water returned to oceans, forming canyons and erosion features. The fossil record sequence, usually interpreted as evolutionary order, is explained by flood geology as burial order, determined by 4 factors. First, ecological zonation, seafloor organisms, trilobites, buried first, shallow marine next, swamp/lowland organisms after, highland mammals last. Second, hydrodynamic sorting, denser, simpler organisms settle first. Third, escapability, immobile organisms buried first, running/flying animals last. Fourth, human fossil scarcity, humans' intelligence enabled them to flee to highest ground, relatively small population, and post-flood ceremonial burial. Post-flood period, plate movement slowed but continued, earthquakes, volcanoes, mountains continued rising, large-scale erosion and canyon formation. A single ice age occurred approximately 100 to 700 years after the flood, triggered by the unique post-flood climate conditions. Also normal river and lake sedimentation, local floods and landslides, and modern sedimentary processes. The fossil record is filled with evidence of rapid burial and catastrophic events. Germany's Solnhofen limestone contains tens of thousands of perfectly preserved fish fossils, scales, fins, even stomach contents clearly visible, some fish caught in the act of swallowing smaller fish requiring burial within hours. The U.S. Green River Formation contains millions of fish fossils, many buried simultaneously in mass death events. This points to catastrophic burial, not normal death processes. Massive fossil graveyards of collective animal death are found worldwide. Agate Springs in Nebraska contains thousands of rhinoceros, camel, and horse skeletons chaotically stacked, showing water transport and rapid burial. Coal beds result from massive vegetation rapidly buried and compressed. Some coal seams contain vertical tree trunks, polystrate fossils, penetrating multiple rock layers. Oil formation requires massive organic material buried and heated quickly. The flood model provides ideal conditions. When living clams die, their muscles relax and shells open. Yet the fossil record contains vast numbers of closed clam fossils, indicating they were buried alive, dying from suffocation, supporting rapid catastrophic burial. As discussed in Lecture 3, soft tissue blood vessels, cells, proteins has been found in dinosaur fossils supposedly tens of millions of years old. This is only possible with rapid burial and isolation from decay, consistent with the flood model. Polystrate fossils, fossils penetrating multiple sedimentary layers, pose a major challenge to uniformitarianism. Vertical tree trunk fossils penetrate multiple coal and rock layers. Under uniformitarianism, these layers would take thousands or millions of years to form, but tree trunks cannot remain standing for millennia without rotting. Flood geology's explanation: trees were uprooted in the flood, floated vertically, heavier roots down, and as sediment rapidly accumulated, were buried across multiple layers within days or weeks. Just as after the Mount St. Helens eruption, millions of trees floated vertically in Spirit Lake and gradually sank into sediment. Rock strata worldwide show large-scale tight folding without fracturing, indicating the layers were bent while not yet fully hardened, supporting rapid deposition. Grand Canyon's Tapeats sandstone, 100 meters thick, is bent into wave patterns without fracturing. If hardened over millions of years, it should have fractured when bent. Uniformitarianism claims millions of years between certain strata, unconformities, but many contact surfaces are perfectly flat with no erosion marks, soil layers, weathering, or biological activity traces. Flat, clean contact surfaces support continuous deposition. Genesis 10 verse 25 states, 2 sons were born to Eber, one was named Peleg, because in his time the earth was divided, Nibe. Stronger evidence comes from geology itself. Mid-ocean ridges like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge show seafloor spreading evidence. Catastrophic plate tectonics proposes this occurred within months during the flood. Pacific subduction zones show plates sinking. Computer simulations demonstrate runaway subduction can occur rapidly. The RAPE project found evidence of accelerated radioactive decay, consistent with rapid plate movement and accelerated nuclear processes during the flood. Uniformitarianism claims multiple ice ages, but young Earth creationism proposes only one, occurring after the flood. Forming massive glaciers requires 2 seemingly contradictory conditions: heavy snowfall, requiring high evaporation rates, and cool summers, preventing ice from melting. Post-flood conditions perfectly satisfied both warm oceans heated by volcanic activity, producing high evaporation and heavy snowfall, massive volcanic ash and aerosols blocking sunlight, cooling summers, as oceans gradually cooled, 700 years, and volcanic activity decreased, the Ice Age ended. Thousands of frozen mammoth remains have been found in Siberia and Alaska. Some mammoths still had undigested temperate plants in their stomachs, indicating they were eating in warm conditions then suddenly frozen. Uniformitarianism struggles to explain such rapid climate change. The post-flood model explains mammoths thrived during the mild post-flood period, then were rapidly frozen when the Ice Age arrived. If Noah's flood was truly global, we would expect flood legends among peoples worldwide. This is exactly what we find. Anthropologists have collected over 270 flood legends from different peoples and cultures worldwide: Americas, Native American tribes, Aztec, Maya, Inca, Asia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Europe, Greek, Roman, Norse, Celtic, Oceania, Aboriginal Australians, Hawaiian, Fijian, and Africa, Egyptian, Sudanese, Zulu. Statistics: 95% describe a global or near-global flood, 88% say a family was saved through obedience to God, 70% mention building an ark, 67% say animals were saved, 66% say the flood judged human wickedness, 57% say survivors landed on a mountain, 35% say birds were sent to find dry land. Specific examples: China's Great U Flood legend and the character, ship equals boat plus 8 plus mouth, possibly alluding to 8 people in the ark, Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh, Greece's Deucalion and Pyrrha story, India's Manu legend. This universality and similarity points to collective memory of the same real event. The ark's dimensions: approximately 137 m long, 23 m wide, 14 m high, 3 decks, total volume approximately 43,000 cubic meters, equivalent to 522 standard railroad cars. For key considerations, only basic kinds, baramine, needed, approximately 1,000 to 2,000 land animal kinds. Juvenile animals could be taken, smaller, eating less. Marine creatures didn't need to be on the ark, insects are tiny. Calculations show the ark could hold approximately 16,000 animals, 8,000 pairs, far exceeding actual needs, with ample remaining space for food and water. Water sources: groundwater, springs of the great deep, atmospheric water, floodgates of heaven, possible vapor canopy collapse, 40 days of rain, ocean water. Pre-flood ocean basins were shallower, continents lower. Where did the water go? Mountains uplifted, Himalayas, Andes, ocean basins sank deeper. Psalm 104 verses 5 to 9 describes this process. He set the earth on its foundations. You covered it with the watery depths. The mountains rose, the valleys sank down to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. NIV. Key fact: if Earth's surface were completely flat, ocean water could cover it approximately 2,700 meters deep. How did freshwater and saltwater fish both survive? Water mixing created various salinity zones. Many fish tolerate different salinities, like salmon. The flood created various microenvironments. Pre-flood fish may have had greater adaptability. Many fish species indeed went extinct. Fossil order is not evolutionary order but burial order, determined by ecological zonation, hydrodynamic properties, escapability, and human fossil scarcity. This is not a time sequence, hundreds of millions of years, but a burial sequence, within 1 year. Many exceptions, reversed fossils, mixed-layer fossils, support this model. Why doesn't mainstream science accept it? 5 reasons: philosophical presuppositions, uniformitarianism and methodological naturalism pre-exclude a global flood, educational indoctrination, generations of geologists taught only uniformitarianism, career pressure, supporting flood geology can endanger academic careers, difficulty of paradigm shifts, like geocentrism to heliocentrism, association with the Bible, Accepting flood geology means acknowledging biblical historical reliability. Importantly, before the 19th century, flood geology was the mainstream view. Modern geology's founders like Nicholas Steno believed in Noah's flood. For faith applications, first, God's righteous judgment is real. The flood was not myth but historical judgment on sin. Second, God's gracious salvation. The ark was the path of redemption. Today Christ is our ark. 1 Peter 3 verses 20 to 21 states, "This water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also through the resurrection of Jesus Christ." NIV. Third, urgency of response. Noah preached righteousness for 120 years, yet only 8 were saved. We live in the days of Noah and must urgently proclaim the gospel. Fourth, an example of faith. Hebrews 11 verse 7 states, "By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family." NIV. The local flood theory faces 5 problems. Biblical language. All the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered would be misleading exaggeration if local. Ark necessity. Why not have Noah migrate? God's promise. Genesis 9 verse 11 says, "Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth." NIV. Violated countless times if only local. Peter's teaching, comparing the flood to future fire judgment, both global. Jesus' comparison, the flood came and took them all away. Many should have survived if local. The local flood theory is a compromise position attempting to harmonize scripture with secular geology, ultimately satisfying neither. This lecture explored 5 key areas. First, biblical foundation. Genesis clearly describes a global catastrophic flood, confirmed by the New Testament. Second, geological evidence. Rapidly buried fossils, paleostrate fossils, tightly folded strata, coal and oil formation, paraconformities. Third, flood geology model, 3-stage framework, catastrophic plate tectonics, burial order explaining fossil sequence. Fourth, post-flood effects, single ice age model, rapidly frozen mammoths. Fifth, cultural evidence, 270 plus global flood legends with striking similarities. Flood geology provides a coherent, comprehensive Earth history framework without requiring millions of years. We've completed a comprehensive review of creation evidence. Lecture 1 Philosophical Theological Foundations, Lecture 2 Biblical Text Arguments for Literal 6-Day Creation, Lecture 3 Young Earth Scientific Evidence, Lecture 4 Theological Ethical Implications, Lectures 5 to 6 Evolution's Fundamental Dilemmas, Lecture 7, this lecture, Flood Geology. The final Lecture 8 will integrate all arguments, summarize creationism's overall coherence, and explore application to life, academics, and apologetic ministry. For key questions, why is creationism vital to Christian faith? How to maintain it in secular academia? How does young Earth creationism affect worldview? Creationism concerns not just the past, but our identity, purpose, and eternal hope. My channel focuses on topics that are difficult for churches to explore in depth, or topics that are complex, perhaps dry, yet extremely important. Fellowship groups and Sunday schools are very welcome to use these videos. If you need particular topics, let me know. I can also provide training support. For FAQ and deeper reflection, the description has a link to my Patreon members area for reference and deeper understanding. If you'd like to know more about today's information or other content, please leave a comment below. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share to help this channel continue. You can also visit my Patreon. Let us together know God, think about faith, and live out Christ.